Thank you very much. Comrade, Prof is
thanks, Comrade Lucky. Thanks, Comrade Prof Radebe for joining. It's a great thing. It's 7:06 now. Perhaps maybe, comrades, can we just wait for the next 4 minutes and then we start?
Why are we waiting, comrade? Because we waited already.
We are going to wait for 4 minutes, then we'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, in the meantime, comrades, can the admin enable me to share?
Comrade Bayan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I think you are enabled, Prof. Please check again.
You have enabled him. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorted. Thanks.
Thank you.
You can also get ready as well. In the meantime, with these few minutes.
So, Comrade Chair, in the driver's seat, it's me and Comrade Bayanda. If you can't find me, Comrade Bayanda will help you.
Okay, thank you.
You find the right pass. That's a good way for him here.
Okay, comrades, let's start. I would like to welcome you all and call open.
Dimani khandura bya muna ka uri re reconcile wena walwa.
Comrades, can you be muted? Comrade Bayanda, please also help me to mute these comrades. So, comrades, thank you for coming, and equally, we would like to appreciate your presence here. Our topic has always been known on our posters exactly what we're going to discuss about. First of all, my name is Stanley Mangena. I'm going to facilitate this this sitting today, and also as the chair of the branch called King Nyabela Mahlangu in Montana, Greater Tshwane region. But beyond that, comrades, I would like to officially give to Comrade Thulano, who's a deputy secretary, to welcome you. And if it's not on the platform, Comrade Nyabela will assist us to do that honor. Comrade Secretariat.
Good evening, comrades. Then, good evening, comrades. I don't seem to see Comrade Thulane. In his absence, I will then do the honors.
No,
okay,
that's
thank
correct.
you very much. Yeah.
Proceed,
thank you very much,
Madam.
comrades, for. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, comrades, for honoring this invitation, putting your time to come and join us as we get educated from Prof. Special welcome and special thanks to Prof Radebe for coming to our branch, for honoring in your busy schedule to come and really educate us so we can understand what is going on and be able to talk with understanding. Thank you very much. We honor you and thank you so much. Over to you, Comrade then.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Nyabela. We really appreciate the word of welcome. And therefore, equally from my side as a facilitator, I would like to assure you, Prof, that please remain settled. And therefore, as we are going to begin to engage on this particular topic, Mara, we are aware that perhaps other comrades present here, they may not know who's Prof Radebe. And in that note, I will therefore request Comrade Lucky just to give us the brief introduction of Prof Radebe. Thanks you, Comrade. Thank you, Comrade Lucky.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. Fraternal greetings to all comrades who have attended this important virtual engagement. Special greetings must also go to the guest speaker who availed himself to come and spend the better part of his evening with us. Speak up, Prof. We really appreciate your commitment towards the struggle. My name is Lucky Tekisho. I'm an ordinary member of this branch with 5 King Nyabela Mahlangu branch. We fall under Tshwane in inner city northwest zone, which is in Tshwane region, of course. This is a political engagement, comrades, and its purpose is to educate each other on the current issues that our progressive organizations are grappling with. No contribution is invaluable. No input is useless in this gathering. As we engage each other, organizational decorum must prevail. Constructive criticism is encouraged, though. Not to say we should not speak, but let's respect each other when we engage on these issues. I'm honored to be given the responsibility by the branch to introduce such a well-rounded leader, a think tank of note, a thought-provoking activist, a highly placed intellectualist. He is a renowned international scholar, a long-standing ANC and South African Communist Party activist. He is currently serving as the Gauteng chairperson of the South African Communist Party. He is the chairperson of the council at the Vaal University of Technology, where he leads the council in providing strategic oversight and direction to the institution and its executive. He also served as an associate professor in the Department of Strategic Communication and at the University of Johannesburg, where he teaches undergraduate and postgraduate students and supervises master's and PhD candidates. In addition, he is the director of the Center for Data and Digital Communication at the University of Johannesburg. This comrade is an award-winning author, public intellectualist, whose research focuses on the political economy of communication, digital capitalism, and national question. In 2023, he won the South African Literary Awards Creative Nonfiction Award for the Lost Prize Prince of the ANC. This is a very critical book that I think I've read, but I've not finished. The Life and Times of Jabulani Nobleman Mzala Ngumalo. I think he was engaging Jacana Media to be able to sell this book. In 2024, he was honored at the South African Cultural and Creative Industry Awards by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. His other notable works include Apartheid Did Not Die, South Africa Unfinished Revolution, a critical examination of the post-apartheid state and public sector communication in the digital age. That I think he did with the University of Johannesburg, where he's currently working, which he edited to explore contemporary challenges in governance and communication. He's also the author of Constructing Hegemony, the South African commercial media and misrepresentation of nationalization, that he did also with the University of KZN Press in 2020. Comrade Mandla has published extensively in peer-reviewed journals, contributed to numerous book chapters, and is a regular commentator in the media. With a career spanning over 2 decades across sectors such as accounting, financial services, ICT, retail, higher education, and the public sector. His academic qualification includes PhD in Media Studies, MA and BA Honors in Journalism and Media Studies, which he got at the University of Wits University. And he also has a BSc in Computer and Information Technology, where he got it at Vista University Soweto campus. Some of us who are old in the struggle, student struggle, we would see that the merger did not take place at that time. But it was only Vista University at that time standing alone. He also serves on several boards, both in private and public sector. This decorated CV belongs to Professor, Dr. Comrade Activist and Kader Mandla Radebe, who is going to be leading this discussion on this critical, important mkhawulo or political engagement. You are welcome, Comrade Mandla. Over to you, Chair. I have done what you asked me to do. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Lucky. And beyond that is a member of the African National Congress.
But I said that, I said
no, thank
that.
You.
Okay, pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Lucky, for that biblical introduction, Comrade.
You're welcome.
was
You're
clear
welcome.
that I even thought that now you are reading a Quran or some sort as far as introduction is concerned. Prof, welcome very much to our branch. Therefore, I will therefore give this platform to you, and therefore let's now engage comrades. The protocol is that, comrades, the speaker will be given an opportunity to present, and after that, then we can have a clarity seeking question after the presentation. Now, everybody must remain muted. Please, let's just respect that request. Everybody must remain muted. It's only going to be the speaker, Comrade Prof, who will be engaging us. Prof, over to you. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear, Prof.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, Comrade Lucky felt like he was reading an obituary there. Hey.
Yeah, I was even afraid.
Comrade, this, Prof is also my nickname. So my friends that I grew up with, they call me Prof. And Comrade Mandla Radebe can account for that name, how I got that name. So comrades, please call me Mandla. Comrade Mandla is fine. That's how I'm known. In my branch of the ANC, there used to be the three of us. So I was Mandla 3 and Comrade Mandla Nkomfe was Mandla 1. So I won't say who was Mandla 2. Chair, also allow me to keep my video off for bandwidth purposes because I'm also sharing. So comrades, I hope that you don't mind, but I'm sure you can see the picture there that it is indeed me who's here and speaking. And Chair, just checking how much time do I have because
No,
you
don't
give,
worry, ma.
you give an activist time. I can speak for the whole night. So how much time should I take, Jen? If the chair is
Chair, yeah, I'm saying, Prof, you can continue. Obviously, we are aware that people are going to work tomorrow morning, as long as you are considerate of that. 45 to an hour or so presentation is enough.
Okay,
And
let's make it less than.
Yeah, as I'm saying, it's 22 past now.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Let's make it less than that, Chair. Comrade, so the topic that I was asked to reflect about is on the critical question of the renewal of the African National Congress, but also in the context of the reconfiguration of the alliance. What are the strategic and the challenges and possibilities that we are faced with? This is very important for me because in the context of this conversation is the fundamental question of the renewal as a matter of survival. And therefore, it is a relevant question that we must debate. But of course, I'm a Marxist-Leninist. Therefore, my entry point always comes from the class interest perspective, where when we talk about such topics, we talk about issues of power relations. We locate them in the mode of production that shape political organizations. There is a metaphor in Marxism that is called the base and the superstructure metaphor. And therefore, the base, the economic base, Marx argues that it often shapes and informs the superstructure. In the superstructure, you find all other institutions, whether it's the church, it's the schools, the university, and political organizations. They are part of the superstructure. Therefore, to understand political organizations, it is important and imperative that you must therefore understand the mode of production in that context. Because when we do that, we'll then be able to analyze the material forces that drive policy choices. But most importantly, the topic that I would like to reflect sharply today are internal factions within the movement. And therefore, in dealing with this question, there is a need to emphasize the role of the movement of the people, the movement of our Tambo. And in doing so, we must also then reflect on the issues of collective discipline And what is the criteria that we must put in place to evaluate the organization's practices? Whether to understand whether it continues to advance or it has betrayed its revolutionary goals. That's what I want to do, Comrade Chair, as briefly, as quickly as possible. And therefore, hopeful comrades will then be able to engage, because I think when we have these conversations, the idea is that let's have engagements on these issues. Now, suddenly, Chair, my screen is not moving. Okay, I hope you can see it's moving on the other side. This slide is not important because it tells us what we know about the movement. As ANC activists, we know the vision of the ANC that is rooted in the Freedom Charter. We know the historic mission of the ANC of uniting the people of South Africa on the basis of non-racialism and non-sexism, but fundamentally of building a democratic society. But of course, post-1994, when the ANC came to power, that historic mission got extended to include issues of how then do we ensure that we uplift the quality of life of South Africans, especially the poor, but also to build a society that is based on equality and justice. But also the ANC, it is important for us to appreciate the fact that the ANC historically positioned itself as a disciplined force of the left. And how that manifests itself, we see it in its commitment to drive and lead the national democratic revolution with a multi-class mass movement and its approach that is grounded on anti-imperialism. Precisely the reason why the imperialist West, led by the US, will take a particular posture toward the ANC-led movement. But this disciplined force of the left can therefore be understood in its principles, such as the ideas of collective leadership, democratic centralism, the enabling of internal debates as we do now, and self-criticism, which we're also going to do, as emphasized in key documents and conference resolutions of the ANC. But fundamentally, Chair, is the historical alliance of the African National Congress with the South African Communist Party. Because it is this historical alliance that has enabled the ANC to embed socialist ideals within its historic mission that could be understood as sharing the commitment of course, ours as socialists, as communist parties, to drive a socialist transformation in South Africa. But the relationship between the ANC and the SACP has certainly influenced the ANC ideological orientation, its strategies, the idea that the ANC could form an armed wing to advance the struggle, umkhonto wesizwe. It is precisely because of the influence of the communists who understood the critical pillars of a revolution. And therefore, that role is important. But the alliance with SACP, COSATU, and SANCO is very important because what it seeks to do confirms the fact that the ANC is a disciplined force of the left, because it puts the working class as progressive forces at the center of our revolution. And therefore, this overview for me, Comrade Chair, is very important to understand the ANC. But of course, post-1994, the ANC assumed what we may call a dual character. This dual character could be understood from the fact that as a liberation movement, the ANC led the struggle against imperialist apartheid. It mobilized the masses for resistance. It forged alliances to dismantle racial oppression and racial capitalism and establish a democratic South Africa. That's very critical, very important for us not to forget. But as a governing party, as a party in government, the ANC has had to balance its revolutionary ideals as articulated in various documents, the Strategy and Tactics in 1969 Morogoro, the Green Book in 1979, if I'm not mistaken, and all those documents. So the ANC had to balance those ideals with the practical demands of being in state power, issues of service delivery, of maintaining the constitutional governance that President Ramaphosa was talking about at the White House yesterday. What this often does then is that it leads to tensions between this historical mission and the administrative performance. This duality is very important for us to locate if we are to understand the renewal of the ANC. But of course, when we talk about in the context of this dual character, are the challenges and balances and the need to balance these ideals. Because being the revolutionary ideals with governance have proven quite difficult for the ANC to navigate this commitment to social transformation in the context of the constraints of a capitalist production. And some of the policy choices that the ANC has made, neoliberal economic framework, and institutional democracy, which very bureaucracy, which exists today. What then this does is that you often then find that there's tension in the context of the compromised policy choices, often compelled to advance pragmatic governance. But what that does, and those of you who are in the state will understand that it often undermines the movement of the masses, of the people. So this background, comrades, I'm deliberately spending time here because I think this background is very important. Because the ANC is not alone in facing this problem, Comrade Chair. I mean, there's been a number of leftist parties. You can go back to the 1930s when the Communist International took a resolution that communist parties should form what it calls the Popular Left Fronts, with moderate governments, sometimes right-wing governments, to confront the rise of fascism in the context of Hitler. If one of the examples was the French Popular Front, which collapsed. But also you can think about an organization that is very similar to the ANC, are the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. And all these examples, what they have taught us and what they have demonstrated to us is that it is often difficult for revolutionary organization to reconcile their revolutionary goals with the demands of governing under capitalist condition. That is very important. Because what then happens, as it happened with the Workers' Party in Brazil, the Lula's party in Brazil, the first time they came to power, is that they came on the basis of a left program, a left agenda. And once they were in power, there were contradictions that existed within those left forces. And the radical left ended up being expelled within the Workers' Party of Lula. And what then they did was that the Workers' Party adopted moderate, market-friendly policies to secure a broader political support and ensure that there's economic stability. And this is what the ANC is currently faced with in South Africa. And with that change in the Workers' Party in Brazil, that shift from radical left to center to align with the center-right forces, what it does, it sort of dilutes the revolutionary essence of those organizations. And what will happen is that while you are in office, you are gradually shifting from left to middle, to filling the middle ground. And what will then happen to progressive governments often become constrained by the power of the capitalist class, which controls the levers in our instance. We saw Rupert yesterday. They control the levers of the economy. They determine the jobs, because every government wants to create jobs, wants to create economic stability, wants to grow the economy. They determine the prices and the production. The challenges that we face with the budget, for example, is as precise of those contradictions that exist in the capitalist system. Then what happens that there's a gradual ideological erosion, which then compromises and sometimes alienates the historical base, the working class. Because the ANC is the motive force. The motive force of the NDR is the working class. That base is eroded, which lead to people being disillusioned. There are accusations of these parties moving to the right. I mean, the Workers' Party in Brazil, it was termed, there was a term that the left became the right, or that the left, they became the left that the right dreamt about. In other words, the left that was advancing the right-wing policies. So that is very important to appreciate that. I'm not going to spend time on the slide, Comrade Chair, because this is what I've already articulated on the character and the nature of the ANC as articulated in the strategy and tactic documents. The ANC as a disciplined force of the left, and that's what the ANC is about, and how that manifests itself and its alliance with, in particular, with the SACP and COSATU, is driving the ANC driving the ideals, being the leader of the National Democratic Revolution, whose motive forces are the working class, as articulated in Morogoro, as we can see that the ANC then deliberately had alliances with the Soviet Union, with Cuba, with Vietnam, which helped the ANC articulate properly its strategy. This is what I'm saying, that the ANC has to be understood as a disciplined force of the left, and it must remain there if you want to ensure that it is renewed. But of course, comrades, the fact of the matter is that there are strategic challenges that the ANC is faced with, and the obvious one is the electoral decline from and I think the major point that why the ANC is losing support. Yes, we can argue that there is a rise of splinter formations, EFF and MK Party. But the crisis of legitimacy and the internal factionalism, what it does, it sort of alienates the base, our historical base as the ANC. And then you end up with a situation where the ANC finds itself. So these are challenges that we must confront. So the renewal imperative is something that we must deal with, because in the 52nd National Conference, there was a call for renewal. But in dealing with this, in my view, Comrade Chair, there are a number of questions that we must ask ourselves. And I want to pose these questions, and I want you as a branch to really think about as we debate these issues. Because when we think of renewal as a form of self-correction, but also as a form of survival, we must ask some of the question that, is there a data that is supporting the ANC ability to self-correct as a cornerstone for renewal? Because without data, we live in a data world, in a data-driven world. And if you can't make decisions that are informed and backed by data, you are then doomed in this artificial intelligence-driven world. But if this data exists, what does it tell us about the lessons that we should have learned? Think about how the ANC first lost the city of Cape Town, and then that was followed by losing the Western Cape. Think about the seismic shift, the impact that happened in 2016, when we lost 3 metros in this province at a go, boom, 1 gone. Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, and Johannesburg. You, comrades in Tshwane, will remember that you were at the center of no sput and no vote. But what did that do to the base in the province? Firstly, the ANC in the subsequent provincial and national elections, we got about 50.4%, which was hanging on to power. It was a matter of time that 2024 were in the mid-30s, and those mid-30s affected the national picture. So what does this data tell us about renewal? Because we've seen these things happening in 2016. 10 years later, it does not look like we're able to learn. So can we then talk about the ANC's ability of self-correction for its survival? Let's ask ourselves those questions. Because does this demonstrate a party that is able to self-correct and change course? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. But what we need, because in doing so, we have to restore the values, the character, and the practices of the organizations. But also in trying to do so, what is the behavior of the ANC post 2024? The calamity that we experienced, getting almost less than 40%. Does the current behavior of comrades at various levels demonstrate an organization that has got the ability to learn and self-correct? Is this reflective of an organization that is able to act towards restoring these values, these characters, these practices? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves if we want to deal with these issues. So, Chair, I want to present 6 theses that are, in my view, are fundamental for a renewal, and then we have a discussion. The first one is fighting corruption. The second one is improving political quality of membership. The third one is on the strengthening of leadership selection. The fourth one, which I think is very important, is building a non-sexist, non-racial movement. This is what the ANC stands for. In other words, resolving the national question, because it remains unresolved. But to do that, you need to build active and campaigning branches. But of course, then we have to deal with the elephant in the room, the reconfiguration of the alliance. Let's deal with the first thesis, which in my view is important. Because what corruption does, it undermines public trust, and therefore it leads to electoral support. Widespread corruption, including corporate capture of the state, that's what the Communist Party first called it before the former public protector called it the state capture, because the state capture does not tell you that the state does not capture itself. It cannot just be captured by anyone else. The working class can't capture the state. It is only the corporate that can capture the state, and that is captured for nothing else. It is sold by those who are in the state for nothing else but for narrow personal accumulation and interest. We have seen scandals involving senior ANC leaders that have severely damaged public trust and reduced electoral support. The party itself has admitted to poor handling of corruption, and which has also led to its weakening. I mean, if you think about the Zondo Commission, it was the president who said the party, the ANC, was accused, number one. I mean, when you do campaigns, comrades, whether it's door-to-door or we go to places, there's just this tendency and this culture of displaying crass materialism and displaying of wealth by comrades, instead of portraying because the ANC is the historical mission is to be with the people and of the people. In other words, it must be led by people who are humble. The second point in fighting corruption is a failure to hold members accountable, because what then does, it fuels the perception of impunity. The ANC failure to act decisively against implicated members has first fostered the culture of impunity. The Zondo Commission report reveals a reluctance to enforce internal discipline, and it undermines anti-corruption efforts, and it deepens internal divisions within the movement. Actually, comrades have been deployed and rewarded for being mentioned in that report. There is a feeling that those who do wrong get rewarded. That is very important, that we must deal with corruption. But also the symptoms, we must also understand corruption from a class perspective, because corruption is a symptom of class interests and patronage networks that exist within and outside of the movement. Because what corruption is, in fact, it reflects entrenched class interest, where the political elite will use the state to accumulate wealth. And when they do that, they reinforce the capitalist exploitation nature rather than advancing transformative policies. In my view, anyone who calls themselves a revolutionary, and if they are corrupt, that is tantamount to treason. It is a form of counter-revolution. In countries such as Vietnam and China, it is punishable by death. Because when you are a revolutionary, your moral conscience must be very advanced and be very high than that of the lumpen proletariat, who have got no interest of the workers. Patronage networks are sustaining corruption. And comrades, you will know that how patronage manifests within the organization. If you want to be a ward councillor, you must be the chair of the branch. That we all know. We know that the likelihood of you becoming a mayor when you are not the chairperson of the region are very low. But the likelihood of you becoming a premier when you are not a chair of the province are also very low. But the chances of you becoming a minister when you are not in an NWC are also very low. So what we need to do in dealing with the corruption, we need to ensure that there is an organizational discipline and accountability. Because without discipline, there will be no unity and credibility in the movement. We need to talk about accountability mechanism to protect the integrity of the movement. I'm going to come to this point as one of the theses that I proposed. But for example, we all know the use of money in the movement is even happening at the branch level. If you want to be a branch chairperson, you buy membership, you control membership. And if we're not going to confront these issues, I can assure you, comrades, we must forget about renewal. Because this culture fosters corruption. You have this patronage network for you to become the regional chairperson. You buy branches, you buy them this, you buy them t-shirts, you put them in hotels, and then you think that you can do away with corruption. You are playing, comrades. We have to confront corruption if we want to deal with renewal. The second thesis is on the need to improve the political quality of membership. My friend Chilize Marwala used to say, or often say, those who do not read should not lead. And to do that, if there is no political education and no ideological clarity, then we must forget about the renewal. Because what are you going to renew? Because renewal is about political education as a tool to understand society. And the only way to understand society, comrades, the ANC is very good in giving us the tools of analysis, Marxism, Leninism as a tool of analysis to understand that our society is a class-based society. Therefore, you need to understand the contradictions that happens within classes and the class struggles in that society. It is essential. And that you can only do and can only be elevated by political education. Ideological clarity, you cannot have unity and combat factionalism without having clear ideological clarity, because when you are clear ideologically, you understand the objectives and the visions of the movement. That you are in a movement because this is a movement of the people that seeks to transform the lives of the people. It is not the movement that is going to ensure that you are deployed. That is very important. If we are not going to combat factionalism and opportunism, entrism, we are not going to renew the organization. Because what factionalism does, it weakens the revolutionary unity, because it diverts the movement from its mission of liberating the working class in particular. Therefore, this must be confronted. But also, what it does, it opportunism dilutes the ideological commitment of a movement. That is why, for example, you find bourgeois interests that have infiltrated the movement. The use of money in electing leadership. It's not a culture of the movement. These are bourgeois foreign tendencies, and they must be exposed, they must be rejected, so that the movement can preserve its revolutionary character. Because if you don't reverse that, you must kiss not just the renewal of the movement, but the movement itself goodbye, because it will never recover from the problems that it is facing. And therefore, the quality leadership simply means that you need to build a leadership that is conscious of the historical mission of the movement. And you're talking about the political education that is mixed with praxis, theory and practice, that is embedded on ongoing study of dialectical materialism, because that's how you understand society. Society, the contradictions that you see today, people are poor not because they don't pray enough. You can go to church and pray, you remain poor. In fact, South Africa is the only country. The working class of South Africa is the only working class that will buy a factory, convert it into a church, and go to that church and pray for jobs that were destroyed by the closure of that factory. So you need to understand how this system and society works. And to do that, you need to understand, you need political education that is going to empower the quality membership with the history of the party, the class struggles that exist in society as they were manifesting themselves in the White House last night. Because what we were seeing in the White House was a form of racialized capitalism where the working class in our context has to be Black or African in particular. Therefore, we need to drive to build a cadre that is conscious, that is aligned and understands the historical mission of the movement. The third thesis, that of strengthening the leadership selection. There's nothing that frustrates me like these names that are touted about when we talk about renewal. So and so can fix the organization. The big man theory does not work, because revolutionary organizations are about the masses. The big man theory is essentially the leadership based on personality cult and individual dominance. Previously, it was Ramaphosa was going to fix the ANC. He's now left with how many years? 3 years. Now we're looking for someone else who must come and fix the ANC. It is not going to happen, comrades, because the big man theory is not a revolutionary theory. And we can only understand that when we do the previous thing that I spoke about, political education. Because big man theory, what it does, it undermines collective leadership. These approaches on personality power that sideline democratic centralism, that replaces the working class collective agency with bourgeois type of hero worshipping, the Trumps, basically. You want to bring a Trump. Even those people, there are people who admire that dictator from Rwanda. His name escapes. What is his name? Kagame. Even those type of dictators, what they do, they put a system in place. The system that they will know that will marginalize and demobilize the people. And therefore, the people cannot actively engage. Big man theory, what all it does is to reinforce individualism, bourgeois individualism distorts our revolutionary struggle and our history, which places the people at the center, because our liberation was fundamentally driven by the majority of the people. It is the people themselves that liberated themselves, who rendered the country ungovernable. So the personalized power and patronage is problematic in my view, because it contradicts what we stand for as a movement, collective organs, people's organs of power. It weakens the working class leadership and brings in this idea. And actually, that's how authoritarianism is fostered. Look at BJP in India with Modi. Trump is an example. I know that most of us have got a soft spot for Putin because he's doing to NATO what many people are failing to do, but we should not lose fact of the fact that Putin himself is a big man tendency, and without him, that system will collapse like a deck of cards. What we need to do, we need a collective leadership that is accountable to the people, that can be removed and replaced by the people. We must prevent concentration of power from individuals. We must emphasize on the importance of democratic centralism, which balance internal debates with unity in action. In other words, democratic centralism simply means that you get into a meeting, you debate issues, you lose because the majority is of a particular view, and you are bound by those decisions. You don't go outside of that meeting and continue with the debate, because that will be factionalism. So strengthening the leadership selection of the movement is very important. You should not elect you because you've got money or because you are able to speak English better than anyone else, but you should elect you because you've got a vision and you understand the historic mission of the movement, and you're going to help us to build a collective. That's the only way we can renew. This is number 4, building a non-sexist, non-racial movement, resolving the national question. Because the ANC as a leader of society, well, it was once a leader of society. I don't think it's a leader of society. You can't lead a society with 40%, quite frankly. You can't lead a society if you are a minority with 20-something% in the Western Cape. But as a leader of society, it has a responsibility of leading the change and the charge of resolving the national question in South Africa. The national question in South Africa, it simply talks about when you drive on the M1, on this side is Alex, on the other side is Sentin. That's what is about. It's a racialized form of oppression, which also in our context takes gender forms, where women are facing even more forms of oppression, oppressed as a nation, oppressed as a class, but oppressed as a gender, triple oppression of women. That is important. To do that, the ANC has to ensure that it addresses non-racialism, but it also addresses gender equality. When you go to our meetings today, there's no difference from PAC. You might as well just is with it. You go it's just black people. Yes, there are dynamics that lead to that, but the fact of the matter is that the ANC has to build non-racialism as a basis of uniting the oppressed group. But the best way to understand that is through a class understanding, racialized equality, and the class structure of our society. In my view, this must be the basis upon which the ANC unites South Africans. And the easiest way of doing that is to do that on the basis of a class struggle. I mean, if you think about the so-called colored townships, for example, and the Indian townships to an extent, the ANC is almost non-existent in those communities, and there are new parties that are mobilizing on ethno-nationalist basis that are further pushing the ANC away. Our renewal must see the ANC to recommit itself in building structures in El Dorado Park, in Lenasia, and all other townships where we come from to ensure that we drive the principle of non-racialism. The ANC, if it cannot challenge practices, patriarchy in particular, and racial inequalities, it would have failed in its mission. If it cannot stand for the marginalized people in society, whether it's LGBTQI communities or whatever communities that exist, it would not have been able to be the leader of society and resolve the national question. The second last thesis, Comrade Chair, I know that I've been speaking for long. I was hoping that I would have been done by now, is to talk about building active and campaigning ANC branches. Because if we don't do that, we might as well forget. Because we have to build branches that are rooted in local communities, that have got the capacity to drive sustained programs of action that improves or deal with the peoples of their life on a daily basis. In actual fact, I want to pose a question that what should constitute a branch in good standing? Can a branch that cannot respond to the most basic information in its locality, such as the number of indigent families, child-headed families in the community, the number of unemployed youth who are not in school, who are not at work, that branch, in my view, cannot be a branch in good standing. Because it simply means that it is a branch that does absolutely nothing but that exists for conferences of the ANC and to elect ward councillors. So we need to rethink and to rethink the role of the branch if we are to renew the ANC. And the best way to do that is to reposition the branches to be at the center of community political life. I mean, one of the things when the Communist Party talks about building a left popular front, one of the things I regret when I look back, we used to take a very hostile posture towards what we would call the ultra-left movements. I mean, I'm thinking about the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee, for example. It was this comrade, their comrades who had been expelled in the ANC and they were attacking the ANC, and we used to take a very difficult posture. But when you look at those communities, those comrades, they were raising relevant issues that are affecting working class communities. It is precisely the reason why those people are no longer voting for the movement, because the movement failed to address those issues. So you have to reposition the structures of the ANC to be at the center of community political life. But of course, mass recruitment must happen, but it must be coupled with political education, development, and discipline. Local campaigns that link with community struggles to achieve the objectives of the NDR is very important. But of course, branches, if you can't fight factionalism at the branch level, but of course, I know that branches are factionalized by leaders who will come and count the branches for conference purposes as if they were voting for us. That has to stop. It is the branches, in my view, as the most basic unit that can renew, that actually should be at the center of the renewal of the ANC. If you cannot renew the ANC at the branch level and create branches that will think that a big man is going to come from somewhere, fall from the sky and solve their problems, because there are problems that are caused because somehow they are cursed, you are not going to renew the ANC Congress. The last thesis is on the reconfiguration of the alliance. Because if you are not going to reconfigure this alliance, you are not going to renew the ANC. We might as well, all of us, close shop and go and, and go and do something else. Because we have a shared history of the NDR. The ANC, the SACP, COSATU, and SANCO is held together by the deep-rooted history of the anti-apartheid struggle, but it's not just an anti-apartheid struggle, it's an anti-imperialist struggle because it is defined through the National Democratic Revolution. The National Democratic Revolution is nothing else but the minimum program that binds all of us. But if you think about it, it's a socialist program because it sees the enemy as imperialism, it sees the enemy as big capital, monopoly capital that today we're afraid to call it white. Because our problem is not just capitalism, but it's a racialized form of capitalism. Because capitalism is run by white people everywhere you go. Black people in the capitalist production, they are nothing else but slaves. At the very least, they are workers, cheap labor. That's how the system is designed. You can never transform it. That is why the movement in designing, in adhering to the NTR, and it was an understanding that you have to fight the system that is oppressing the majority African people. So reconfiguration must seek to revive and strengthen this shared vision amongst this political formation and social conditions. Because the challenges of unity and the independence within the alliance, where alliance partners must maintain organizational independence, then tensions arise over policy differences. I mean, if you think about it, the strategy of the ANC in its choices of the coalitions with opposition parties, it's a debate that exists in every organization. I can tell you the Communist Party is a debate that is raging. But in my view, the reconfiguration process must involve reaffirming the mutual respect for each formation, internal democracy, and a strategic role in driving the division and dealing away with the division that weakens us and find what makes us stronger when we are united. Because I can tell you, without the unity of the Communist Party, the ANC, and COSATU in particular, we can all kiss the power, the state power, and the ability to transform this country goodbye. We have to understand the fact that it was not a mistake for the ANC to create deliberate alignment and parties. Comrade Chair, there's a comrade who's raising his hand. I want to assume it's a mistake. We can just assist the comrade to lower the hand. We have to appreciate the fact that it was deliberate for COSATU and the SACP to be part of the alliance with the ANC, precisely because the ANC understands that the working class leadership must be at the heart of the struggle. Because it is the working class that must take full responsibility. Everyone who's sitting here, I can tell you, is working class. There's no bourgeois person who's sitting here. There's no one who owns the means of production here. We're all working class. Must take full responsibility of the NTR. Because we have to be able to highlight the concerns about the ANC electoral decline and what compromises that could be made. COSATU and the SACP are deliberately making point and advocating for a reconfiguration of the alliance, which will put the working class at the center to be more decisive in rebuilding trust between the ANC and the masses. Now, the question we must then ask ourselves as ANC activists, as ANC members, is what are the permutations of this reconfiguration? Because it is a fact that the ANC, the SACP has taken a resolution as early as 2017 to contest elections independently. And that resolution has been made practically that the SACP will be contesting local government elections independently 2026. What we need to be doing, comrades, is to be talking about the permutation. There are, for example, comrades in various spaces who will say, maybe there will be a word where we will agree that this party is strong, this party is weak, so this party must contest for what the other party must contest for PR. These are permutations, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just emphasizing the point that we need to deal with the question of reconfiguration of the SACP. This is what I'm talking about here, Comrade Chairperson, because the need for strategic renewal and mass mobilization should be at the center of the reconfiguration of the alliance. Because this is not just about structural adjustment, but also to revitalize what makes us strong, our political education, our organizational capacity, our unity in action, because the ANC is not going to win elections if COSATU is weak. So all partners of the alliance recognize the need to deepen the alliance role as a vehicle for radical transformation. What we need to do is to push others to neoliberal policies, because we must all admit that neoliberal policies, the failures of neoliberalism, is what has brought us here, is what has brought us to go to Trump, to White House to beg, because we do not have the cards, if I can use his language. The last point, Chair, I want to raise is on the way forward, and I promise you I'm going to stop after this. I just think that we need, Comrade Chair, briefly to really think about the governance and the accountability of the ANC. Because the concentration of power across the party structures is problematic. And this point I've made, a point I made earlier on, that it is common for individuals to simultaneously become MPs, cabinet ministers, NEC members, NWC members. These patterns, in my view, which of course is replicated across in the provinces, Comrades PAC, PWC, MPLs, MECs, and in the regions, it's the same thing. You are in an REC, you are in the Regional Working Committee, you are either a councillor. What this does, comrades, is that it creates an accountability loopholes and self-regulation. Because these overlapping roles, they lead to a situation where officials often require accounting bodies, which they themselves participate in. We want to hold a minister accountable. You expect the NWC to hold the minister accountable, but that minister sits in the NWC. Then you become a referee and a player. This self-referential accountability undermines the independent of scrutiny and accountability. I just think that we need to really rethink this thing, because this is when dissent is suppressed, because I know that I'm powerful. I'm in the top, I'm in an office bearers, I deployed there, and then you just can't hold me accountable. In actual fact, those of you who are in good governance will understand that this is it stands counter to the King Four codes of good practice and good governance. Because in entities and bodies, you'll create a board where the management will account to that board. But here you've got comrades who are loyal to themselves, they account to themselves. And that has contributed to the weakening of the movement. Because what it does, these risks of public governance, they create a credibility deficit. Because that is why today I was talking about the inability to hold comrades accountable who have been identified as having issues in the Zondo Commission, but it seems that comrades are rewarded. Comrades, I'm not going to repeat the slides. The slides on conclusion is what I have said. I think I must pause here because I think I've spoken too much and I run a risk of boring comrades. But let me take this opportunity, Comrade Chair, to thank you for the opportunity and thank the Branch Executive Committee for your invitation, Chair. I will pause here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Mandla, Prof. We really appreciate the presentation. It was mouthful and present here. There are comrades I think also what you raise is a thought-provoking within the context of the renewal of the African National Congress. So, as I indicated that this time I'll therefore give as an opportunity for clarity-seeking questions and comments. And comrades, let's share the time. I will at least each and every participant, if you cannot go beyond 3 minutes, that will be great. 1 minute, 2 minutes, ask question. And if there are comments, perhaps maybe you can go to 3 minutes or so. Comrades, let's now see the hands. I have the first hand from Comrade David Scovela. I also have the hands from George Magoma. I have a hand from Jose Kaunda. Philip, Comrade Philip. Comrade Mwekezi. Yeah, these are the hands I have for now. I also have Mafashe. Is that correct? Mafashe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's entertain these 6 hands. But also, comrades, I must indicate to you that we need to acknowledge the presence of Comrade Dipuo Moropa, who's a REC member present with us. Perhaps also somewhere as we engage towards the end, should be also be given opportunity to make to give us a word or so. But now let's engage according to the list that I've indicated. Comrade Scovela, Shayaba.
Thank you, Maile. I can't see where to raise a hand here. If you don't mind.
Oh, okay, 7, Comrade Funky. Comrade Funky. Yeah, that's 7. Let's deal with the 7 for now. Let's move, Comrade Scovela.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairperson. Comrade Mandla, thank you very much for the presentation. And we really appreciate to have someone who's not angry from the SACP to address us. Our Comrade Mampo is disturbing me now.
So sorry, Comrade Scovela. Comrades, can you be muted? It's only Comrade Scovela who's talking, please.
Thank you. Comrade Mandla, I don't know why SACP comrades are so angry and bitter, because every time they talk, they use unsavory terms, against the ANC, and we are actually, the odds are actually stacked against both parties, the ANC and the SACP. And if we could work together, that would be better for the organization. I mean, for the two organizations. But what I wanted to say is that you haven't touched the issue of the likelihood of the SACP contesting the elections on its own. Because if the SACP will be contesting the election on its own in the forthcoming elections, independent of the ANC, that will mean, it will be acting like all other breakaway parties from the ANC, the UDM, COPE, EFF, MKP, and a variety of other smaller parties. And it will also be fishing mainly from the same pond. That is the be reducing the ANC to a shadow of its former self. The situation will even be worse with the SACP because it will not only be fishing from the same pond like the others, but will be fishing out of the ANC's bucket. When we are fishing, sometimes we catch a fish and put it in the bucket and say, no, I'll remove the scales, later. So SACP will be fishing in the same, in the ANC bucket, because most, if not all, SACP members are also ANC members as well. And on the other hand, some members of the ANC are also members of the SACP. And that's one of the rarest instances where the ANC tolerates dual membership, because the two did not contest elections against each other, as adversaries in the past. Therefore, if the voters who currently enjoy dual membership for both the ANC and the SACP have to choose sides in the elections, how are they supposed to make a decision? In simple terms, the SACP will be poaching ANC voters. And if the SACP contests elections independent of the ANC, members of the ANC who are also members of the SACP will campaign for the SACP as opposed to the ANC. And in that case, what will make SACP different from MKP and or any other political party like the DA? Remember, Comrade Mandla, JZ was subjected to disciplinary proceedings by the ANC for breaching the ANC constitution and subsequently expelled for campaigning for another political party in the previous elections. Should members of the SACP, who are also members of the ANC, first have to resign from the ANC before campaigning for the SACP? Will any member of the ANC be campaigning for the SACP in the forthcoming elections while still a member of the ANC be doing exactly what JZ was expelled for from the ANC? I'm trying to summarize my concerns, Comrade Mandla, with the hope that you will be able to give us a clarity, because it is really the first time. This is the rarest opportunity to be addressed by a senior leader of the SACP, in this kind of a challenge. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Okay, thanks, comrades. Comrade George?
Hand lowered, Comrade Chair. Thanks.
Okay, Comrade Khosi?
Thank you, Comrade Stan. Let me say also, I welcome the submission made by our provincial chair. Very comprehensive submission indeed. And quickly, we also need to correct the Comrade Nyabela when he says all the communist membership, when they speak with an angry voice. It is not correct. We are not doing that. We are only addressing issues that are part of the current material conditions, which are dictatorial. But with that said and done, Comrade Chair, I'm not going to take a minute. I'm going to raise two questions with our provincial chairperson, Comrade Mandla. Through the entire submission that we have made, Comrade Chair, I'm very worried that the ANC in its current form, will it be able to renew itself through this foundational course that it is running currently on a national base without realigning its constitution? In fact, realigning it and amending it at the same time, because the characteristic of its current leadership is not a leadership that fits within the parameters of the current renewal process. So there is challenges that are arising from there. And one, you have just highlighted it, that you have people, those who are in position of power, who are sitting in disciplinary committees. So they are referees and players at the same time. So we need to look into that. And that question stands of saying, will it be possible for the organization to renew itself without the constitution being realigned and being amended? The second question in closure, Comrade Stan, to Comrade Mandla is, per your observation, informed by exactly what I have just articulated now, has the ANC as a revolutionary movement learned from other revolutions? Why I'm asking this is because we seem to be taking a detour from the freeway. We are collapsing the organization, we are collapsing the movement. You know, there is chaos within the ranks of the ANC. I'm watching the current sitting of the regional conference in Pitamukawa. It just collapsed now. Comrades have been beating each other with chairs and etc. and so on. And this comes back to the same issue of saying, what is that needs to be done with this organization? Because the way it is now, we are on a freeway to hell. The ANC is collapsing, and if nobody take cognizance of that fact, that we are currently not driving on the correct route, when we open our eyes, it will be late. I want to thank you, Comrade Stan. Please make sure that you distribute the slides immediately after our sitting. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Hosi. Comrade Philip. Comrade Philip. Okay, we will pass. Comrade Mwegeti. Comrade Mwegeti. Comrade, can you hear me?
Thanks very much, Comrade
We can hear you, Chair.
Yeah, Comrade Mwegeti.
Thanks very much, Comrade Chair. Thanks very much, Comrade Chair.
Comrade, no man, I had a problem with the unmuting here, man. It looked like the host was not allowing me. My apology, man.
Okay, Comrade, just hear me. Comrade Mwegeti, you will come after Comrade Philip.
So,
apologies. Thank you.
No, thanks, Comrade Stan and Comrade Mwegeti. My apology, man. Just it was giving me problem to unmute here. And maybe just to say good evening to all comrades and welcome to Comrade Radebe on your, and thank you very much for your presentation. It's welcomed. Without taking too much time, am I audible, Comrade Stan? I hope I am.
You are, leader.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important, Comrade Stan, that comrades they awake. They get to wake up. I don't want to say to smell the coffee, because I don't know which coffee they are probably drinking. Maybe it's cappuccino. But we really need to get to wake up. Currently, we are at 40% nationally. In the province of Gauteng, we're 33%. That's supposed to give us an idea to project towards 2026. What could be worth happen to us in Tshwane, in particular. And comrades from Joburg, other regions, they should start thinking as well. I think we must wear the thinking cap very deep. We need ukujula, comrades. Yes, I don't have another word in English, because the English is too simplistic to these things. We need ukjula, not ukjuluka, but ukjula. We need to deepen our thinking in the current epoch where we are now. In 2024, when we contest elections, more than 10 organizations, political parties were established in this country, highly funded by capital, white monopoly capital, foreigners, contest the ANC and unseat the ANC below 50%. The province of Gauteng has felt the brunt of exactly that. We cannot approach 2026 in the same approach we've been approaching elections for the past many years as we were doing. And Comrade Mandla, you must help us here, because really we want to think deeper and deeper. One Comrade Kaunda made a reflection that maybe we need to think, since we are able to find certain theory or investment to USA as we did yesterday, maybe we must go and find revolutionary theoretical investment in other countries alike us, liberation movement. In many years ago, Comrade Kaunda and Comrade Stan, we've made a point that liberation movements in Africa, they are dying a natural death. The only current liberation movement that is remaining into power is in Zimbabwe. Correctly done or wrongly done, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter, they're in power, they came back to power. Now I'm saying to comrades that we cannot approach the 2026 the same as we have approached the previous elections. And maybe this is the time, Comrade Mandla, and you must assist us. Learning from Comrade, from Sandanese National Liberation Movement in Nicaragua, Comrade Stan and Comrade Kaunda. The liberation movement there has lost power. And with the same pattern that we are going, with all its alliance, and maybe Comrade Mandla, you must reflect on that as a learning point, that what should we learn from there? Post they lost power, Mao, the teaching of Mao has been taught them that to lose power, you must learn how to regain power. And then they split with all the liberation and alliance partners. Said, let's contest this election, but we all go different ways. Consulting our context goes this way, contest, Sanko contest, Communist Party contest, the ANC contest. We have lost power. After they generated certain percentage amongst themselves, that's the brief Comrade saying that I want to share, and comrades must be aware. After they generated percentage, the Sandanese Liberation Movement came back to power with 52% from all combination of all its alliance partners. Going forward, they've regained more hegemony. Today, they don't have a so-called deputy president. There is a president and a co-president. They're both presidents in the same country because of the reluctance to learn when time permitted them to learn that power is getting lost and we need to think about how we win power back. Please reflect on that, Comrade Mandla. Second and lastly, I'm going to close, Comrade Stan, through your indulgence. And maybe
make it short later.
Very quickly, General. The point, Comrade Mandla, that you have made on the cabinization of the National Executive Committee, the referee and the player, how can it get to be resolved nationally going forward to ensure that we come back better and more coherent? I thank you very much. And thank you, Comrade Stan. And congratulations to What Fight for this great work that you are doing. Mandla.
Mandla leader. Comrades, the next one, Comrade Mwegezi.
Thanks very much, Comrade Chair, Comrade Stan. Let me submit my greetings to the provincial chairperson of the SACP in the Gauteng province, Comrade Mandla Radebe, and also welcome the report, a very progressive report that unpacks essentially the contradictions that are us today. I want to confine, Comrade Chair, my submission on the particular state, interchangeably referring to government, of course. In 2012, the ANC went to Mahlangu conference, and then out of that particular conference, it came out with the what we call a developmental appraiser, which essentially is to reflect on its own shortcomings and weak points. And one of these, of course, was that how, therefore, do we build the ANC as a key strategic center of power? And this is the ANC resolution in 2012, reflecting some of its shortcomings and weak points. And of course, for it to respond, then it had to be honest to itself to say, in order for us to reflect honestly, or to build rather the ANC as a key strategic center of power, one, the ANC must reaffirm its commitment to the 5 critical pillars of the national democratic revolution. And one of it is that being able to build a capable democratic, developmental, but also ethical state. And this is where I want to confine my submission, Comrade Chair, that what type of a state is this? And I think that as revolutionaries must begin to question this very robust. It is defined in that resolution that this type of a state, that is called capable, democratic, developmental, and ethical, is the state that its function must be independent of capital. That's one. 2, is the state that its core function must possess transformative features. 3, it is an activist state that must at all material times be convulsively found in the battles of social transformation. And I think these are some of the things, Comrade Mandla, Comrade Chair, we need to reflect this moving forward, particularly as part of reconfiguring the alliance. It is very much important that we begin to reflect on these particular issues, whether we are regressing in that regard or whether we're not regressing. Comrade Mandla also touched about the proponents of what was called in the SACP at the time, the culture of corporate capture of the state. And I would concur with Comrade Mandla, of course, with that particular submission, because what we have seen in the movement, or essentially what Comrade Mandla had referred to as the gradual erosion of the revolutionary consciousness amongst the mass democratic movement and the governing party in particular, was that while state capture on itself took off on steroids, we have seen the bourgeoisie democratic tendency degenerating itself into parasitism and the state-owned enterprises being essentially robbed for purposes of course, of being surplus invested in terms of speculative capital when the working class continues to remain marginalized from our mainstream of our economy. So these are shortcomings that are persistent even today, which we need to reflect, and on an ordinary branch, what needs to be done in moving forward to save the soul of the African National Congress. The culture of accelerated rent-seeking, the culture of corporate capture of the state, conglomerates of transactions that are circulating into branches to undermine the democratic outcomes. When branches are captured and when a primitive accumulation becomes the common denominator. These are some of the things which I think I could concur with Comrade Mandla, that they are beginning to become a common ground in the liberation movement and historically begin to erode its historical task. But of course, we need to reflect on that. Of course, also the diversionary tendency that begins to be very problematic, that we have seen consistently rising in terms of the liberation movement. So I think, Comrade, we know what are the challenges. But of course, Comrade Mandla, in my submission in conclusion would be, out of all these difficulties that the liberation movement has suffered, you would know that in the SACP at some point there was the characterization of declaring that we're actually being ascended through the mafia state, and the mafia state was ushered to replace the developmental state. And once a developmental state is actually being advanced via a mafia state, the chances are that the historical mission of the ANC becomes eroded. But not only that, the semi-insurrectionary mass struggles that were waged by our forebears, in particular in the 70s and the 80s, becomes totally obliterated because of the ascendancy and the ushering of the mafia state. And I think that the ANC members must really take charge and ascend authority of who exercise state power in this particular country. Because central to everything, Comrade Chair, we can argue in a normal branch, we can argue in a normal BBGM. The ultimate point, as Karl Marx in literature outlines, that the state is an instrument that protects the interest of a class in power in a classical sense by using state institutions and corresponding ideas. This was Marx analyzing the dominance of the state. So you would know the origin and the character of the state if it's not contested by the working class itself through the reconfigured alliance, so that they are able to defend the gains of the workers and the working class in particular. So those are my comments, Comrade Chair, my submissions. But however, I concur with Comrade Mandla in this particular regard about the hypnosis and the diagnosis that we have seen in the liberation movements. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, comrade. Mwegezi, comrade Mafashe.
Let me appreciate the presentation presented and with noting that really progress in this renewal of. Now, my concern is on the issue of how going to initiate the approach towards the national mobilization for the election. How is going to be the approach and approaching that. That's what
Hear you, comrade Mafashe.
executive and as empowered to act in terms of understanding and aligning self to the renewal. Then the concern that I'm raising is about the mobilization counting to the seats, whereby the party will be contesting the election to the ANC constituent election. If they can get clarity around that, as I appreciate the presentation. That's what I put on.
Thanks, comrade Mafashe. Where Prof maybe might not have heard, but we'll see how we address that. We're struggling a little bit, but it's fine. Comrade Funky.
First, a long time Mandla, comrades. Comrades then announced that there's an REC member here, so I think this is an opportunity for to reflect on the your thesis number 2, Comrade Mandla. I mean number 4, if I'm not mistaken, active and campaigning branches of the ANC. And I agree with you how the performance must be measured, and not only by a number of committing meetings. Say this is an active branch, but at least by the actual work and in the branch. As you have mentioned, I think Comrade Zugo once also tabulated the issues there. Our participation in policing forums, I mean, our assisting indigenous families, dealing with the issues of in our wards. That is the work of the branch, but also political education. There are many forms of political education. So those are the branches. But the issue that I did not hear you raising, perhaps I missed it, you raised it, is the issue of factions. And I mean, how do you have am I lost?
We can hear you.
Proceed,
I
comrade
think I
Funky.
lost. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Proceed.
Yes, thank you. How do you have a leadership, whether it's the province, national, or even the region, been given nicknames or pseudonyms? Here in our region, we have got so-called VOPA, we've got Pinda. And regional leaderships don't condemn those kind of things in platforms where they have got an opportunity to do so. They welcome them. Nothing wrong with factions. If we can be a faction to fight corruption in our various parts, that is good. I mean, we're a faction, but we're a faction for a good cause. But when we have leadership that encourages those kind of things, then we are going to have, particularly when the organization is limping like what we have. I mean, on your recommendations, the issues of governance and accountability. A leader that is being deployed, a regional leader is deployed in government, and there's a poster of him or her with a huge face of him or her. in the municipality. But it's not even mentioning ANC. I mean, you have a platform to go to the media, a TV, newsroom, Africa, whatever. You go there, you speak. You don't speak on behalf of the ANC. As ANC led this and this, as ANC, on those good things that you are doing, you speak about yourself. In the posters yourself. There is no emblem of the ANC, but you are reflecting on achievements there. And then you want the people to think that this is, you want to be popular than the ANC yourself, the organization that deployed you. You don't say anything about it in that poster. You know, so these are the things that I think we are not learning lessons. As the comrade has spoken there, reflecting to the struggle of Nakaraku. We're not learning this, and these are the simple things. Reconfiguration of the alliance is not a big concept, as Chrisane reflected on social. It's not a big concept. I mean, just having regions that invite Communist Party and Sanko on now and then on various programs to discuss together. I mean, what is wrong with us inviting Communist Party or Sanko to enhance a program that we seek to implement in terms of ideas, in terms of manpower, in terms of, I mean, what is wrong with that? We want to sit alone there, we want to call them during elections, and then when we are dealing with deployment, we don't want them to come there. These are the simple things. It's not a big concept. It's just about working together, you know. So that is the issue, Comrades. Then I think we just need to reset ourselves, go back to the basics. Really, otherwise we are going to go to 5% and will be finished. Lastly, the issue of corruption, Comrade Mandla, your thesis number one is you raised. I mean, it must just be. I don't know how ANC on its own. We have Integrity Commission, but ANC must find a way of dealing with this issue decisively, without not necessarily focusing on police, law enforcement, or what. ANC must just deal with this issue decisively, because comrades just loot with impunity when they are deployed there. And it's the ANC that suffers on the ground. Thank you, Comrade Mandla.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Funky. Comrade Mandla, let me give it to you to respond to this question raised. Obviously, others were not questions, they were comments. Let's try to respond. Over to you.
Comrade Chair, thank you very much. And thanks to comrades for those questions. And I'm sure that I will be happy to have a follow-up session where we have a little bit longer so that we can engage at the deeper level, because I have a cutoff at 9 because I'm engaging to another session. So, but the comrades are raising quite a number of important issues. You know, the point that Comrade David Schobela is raising. So I think I want us to come back to the topic of today, because your answers lie there. Because the topic of today is how do we renew the ANC? Because that's the essence of the problem. So the other issues are peripheral or are as a subsequent of the decline or of the degeneration of the ANC. And if you're not going to resolve that question, you'll be chasing after your shadows. You know, because you will be forever trying to find the problems. You'll be forever trying to denounce this and denounce that until you go to the root cause of the problem. In actual fact, the ANC might die, and its ideas, and with that, its ideas. The SACP has been The SACP contested elections before the ANC could contest elections. In the 50s, the SACP was in parliament, of course. Those were problematic structures. Now, to want to, and the SACP is, I argue that usually people say the SACP was formed in, it was formed in 1921, but the SACP in essence owes its existence to the ISL in 1915. So that's why the SACP came. Now, to compare the SACP to splinter group, I mean, I think it's not correct. Because the SACP is not. The SACP is an independent political party that has got a responsibility to lead a socialist revolution in South Africa. And if at any particular time the SACP feels that, because currently the SACP has defined any strategy of advancing socialism in the context of South Africa through the National Democratic Revolution. And as I said, the National Democratic Revolution is nothing else but the minimum program that we have as the alliance. And if the SACP, upon having applied its analysis and come to a conclusion that in the actual way, the best way of advancing socialism is through contestation of election, the SACP has got every right to do that. And that right can't be defined by non-SACP members as this and that. I think that for me is important. By the way, the duality of the ANC membership is enshrined in the constitution of the ANC. So if you can't process SACP members like you dealt with JZ, because you'll have to go to the constitution of the ANC and change the dual membership there before you want to process SACP members who are ANC members who may then contest against the ANC. But for me, that's not the point. The point is that we need to deal with the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the ANC inability to self-correct. Because I deliberately use the example of Western Cape. Because Western Cape is a recent example. And then you come to Gauteng. We've got these examples in front of us, where we've got, this is why I'm asking this question, comrades. Do we have the data that demonstrates the ANC ability to self-correct when it's under siege? And if the answer is no, and the question we must therefore ask ourselves, how we should then help the movement self-correct. That for me is important. The question that the point that Comrade Khosi is raising are quite correct, including perhaps the need. But I don't think the problems could be resolved by amending the constitution of the ANC. That will be futile. You have to deal with the 6 theses I put on the table. If you want to drive the question of renewal, you will have to deal with you will have to fight corruption in the ANC. You will have to improve the quality of the membership of the ANC. Because if you've got a quality membership, that quality membership will be able to take charge and confront leaders who come to branches and give them money. But also you'll have to strengthen the manner in which you elect people into position of power. So all those things are very important. But also you'll have to put the alliance at the center of renewal. So all those questions, in my view, are important in resolving the problems of the ANC. It can't just be one problem and think that or one solution that you think you can use in addressing the issues. I think you will come short in dealing with the problems that are confronting the ANC. Today, the point that Comrade Mshengo is raising are very important. But again, Comrade Philip, the point that he's raising, I think it's similar to the points that Comrade David is raising. Let's not worry about peripheral issues. The state, yes, the state is an important lever to advance a revolution. But you are not going to have the lever to advance the revolution if your house is not in order. So fundamentally, we need to come back to the question of renewal of the ANC rather than worrying about the state. Because the state is not the revolution, it is but a lever to advance a revolution. And if you look at the lessons that you're talking about from the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, at the heart of their revival is fundamentally their renewal and their ability to course correct and bounce back from the setbacks because they are able to identify the mistakes, they are able to purge. There's a comrade whose name I'm forgetting who write about the ability of purging, that successful organizations are organizations that are able to purge and self-purge. Not purge for factional reasons, but purge because you need to correct. I was making an example. One of the best way in China, they purge corrupt comrades is to execute them because they are poisonous. I'm not advocating for execution. It's not the ANC policy. I don't support killing of people myself. But we need to be able to purge wrong tendencies. And the problem, we need to think deeply about the problem of having ANC leaders holding more than dual roles as referees and players. And part of the problem is that if the ANC argues, in my view, to be a leader of society, why then all its leaders are concentrated in government? Because if you take the current leadership of the NEC members, all those comrades, they are either in parliament or have got links to the state. That's not leading society. The day the ANC is a leader of society will be the day when CEOs of banks are in the NEC of the ANC and they don't want to be deployed. The day the ANC is the leader of society is when mining leaders are in the NEC of the ANC and don't want government tenders. The day the ANC is the leader of society is when its NEC has got vice chancellors of universities and they've got no interest of being deployed. Because it is precisely at that ability of handing what we call independent cadres who will be interested in advancing the revolution, not to seeing revolution, advancing the revolution by being in government and parliament. And this is an anomaly that we need to confront, comrades, because if we are unable to do that, I mean, you just go to any conference of the ANC and look at the policy formulation processes. It's the tail wagging the dog. Because we'll have comrades who are deployed in the state, accounting officers, DGs coming with policies that must then influence the ANC. When in actual fact, it should be the other way around, that the ANC needs to influence government, and government must implement ANC policies. These are some of the weaknesses that we must deal with and confront if you want to renew the ANC. And if you are not going to deal with those structural issues, so it's a structural issue how the ANC is structured. And if you are not going to tamper with that, we are not going to deal with those issues. I agree with all the points that the Comrade Moeketsi is raising, fundamentally on the developmental state and how it is defining it is quite correct. But I will again argue that definition, at the heart of it, whether you're looking at why you talk about the capable state, there can be no deployment of cadres who are capable to ensure that there's a capable state if the ANC is not renewed. Because if the ANC continues in the manner in which it is, you are then certainly facing the path that you are faced with. The comrades were raising the question on the party contesting elections. I mean, there's a debate for another day because the party has got a resolution from 2017 which was reaffirmed in the Special Congress in 2024, December, on contesting, and it's called the State Power Resolution. And that resolution has got absolutely nothing to do with the ANC, but it's got everything to do with the strengthening of the National Democratic Revolution. And that is why that I urge comrades in the ANC to take a positive posture to that resolution of the Communist Party, because it is not a hostile resolution like some other comrades would want to define it as hostile organization like the MKP. And actually to equate SACP to MK Party and EFF will be unfortunate, because we as activists of the SACP, we remain members of the ANC and will never become hostile to the ANC. So you need to understand that resolution as a basis, as a reconfiguration in action. That reconfiguration is not going to take place in boardrooms, it's going to take place actively on the ground. When you reconfigure the alliance, you force the ANC and you help the ANC to renew. That is why I was saying that comrades must think about permutations. Comrades in Tshwane, you have failed yourselves independently as the ANC to renew. You banned the city in 2016, no Sputla, no vote campaigns. No one else, the ANC comrades, banned the city and proceeded not to campaign. We as a Communist Party had to come into the town, to the city, to put up banners and posters for elections when there was nothing was happening in Tshwane. And then you lost elections. And you think you can come back. You have not come back. In actual fact, I can tell you that in next year, ANC in Tshwane is going to go down. Precisely because there's these issues that Comrade Funky is raising. Of factions, I did raise them, Comrade Funky. The issues of faction and use of money and patronage in the ANC. It has become a culture that if you want to be in the RAC, you go and capture branches and give money to branches. And if you want to be a PEC, you must capture the regions. Now, they say, those who are educated, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So once you've introduced a wrong culture, you have messed up the organization, basically. And there is no way you can recapture the imagination of the people, because people, communities, they know you, where you stay. They know your character, they know how you carry yourself, they know the places you go and drink, they know your behavior. And you become, they associate your behavior to the ANC. Precisely the reason that ANC comrades must take the posture of the SAC positively and view it as a strategic perspective for renewal of the movement and for reconfiguration of the ANC. There's a political report, Comrade Jacob Mama Bula presented to us some time ago, around, I think it was around 2019. And we even wrote a statement on it. In the political report, in analyzing the behavior, I can't remember which ANC conference we were analyzing, we came up with a concept of the slate market, where we argued that there is a steady growth of the use of money in the ANC, which we then called a slate market, which we analyzed at the time as gradually taking a form of an informalized sector of an economy. A political economy of the slate, or the slate economy, where the economies of slate is then becoming a slate market, where just like any market, we argued that there are slate services, where there is a clear demand and supply, where there is a slate price that is determined by the slate cycle, like in the market, where there are booms towards conference and the price goes up and it declines thereafter, immediately after the conference, where it becomes a normal cycle, the booms and the bust of the capitalist economy. We even went further and said, in actual fact, we think that there are even slate lords They are slate runners. They are slate votes, the products. They are slate beneficiaries who shape this emerging, fast-growing informal sector of the economy. That's what we said. And we therefore said the ANC has to be very careful in dealing with the slate market, because we are of the view that it is operated by very sophisticated logistics with complex networks that makes detection and identification very difficult. But everyone knows there's a use of money. Now, comrades, if you don't deal with this thing, talking about 2026 local government elections becomes an exercise in futility. Because you know what happened in 2016, you know what happened in 2021, and you know what's going to follow in 2027 or 2026. It's just as the day follows the night and the night follows the day. It is as predictable as that. Now you can bring, Comrade Funky, whatever commission, integrity commission you want to bring. The ANC actually does not need an integrity commission. It needs comrades with integrity. And you can only, in my view, have those comrades if you renew the ANC along the 6 theses that I presented. And the last one is reconfiguring of the alliance and put the alliance at the center. Because if you put the alliance at the center, you're going to put the working class leadership at the center. If you're going to put the working class leadership at the center, it might just help you to be able to deal with it. Because someone, I can't remember which leader of the ANC who said in the Zondo Commission, the ANC itself was captured. And if that's the case, then you might as well, Comrade Chair, close shop and forget about this revolution, because it is gone. Chair, let me stop here. I know that I'm out of time. I need to jump off and go to another session. But thank you very much, and thanks for the engagements. And I think we need to have a follow-up session on this, because we just did not cover sufficiently the issues that comrades are raising that are important. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, no, thanks, Comrade Mandla. Obviously, as you indicated that you are supposed to leave, we may have to indeed arrange the other session so that, because there were a number of questions also on the chat group, and other comrades wanted to raise some of the issues. I'm not sure if we have 2 minutes or so. Just allow one comrade who would like to ask a question.
Yes, we can do that, Chair. Just for 2 minutes.
Comrade Mulwando Makunga, can you ask the question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening to everyone. It's a pity that Umakhulukhulu man is in a hurry, because I wish that he could elaborate on this multi-class mass movement and non-racialism of the African National Congress. I think one, that is a mischaracterization, this notion that the ANC is a broad church. In any revolution that you find, even the Afrikaner Anglo-Boer revolution, it was defined who are the oppressed and who's the oppressor. But the final thing that throws me off, I think we need to speak about the renewal of the alliance in general, because when you listen to members of the Communist Party, I think sometimes they forget that they've got dual membership. They are equally as corrupt as the ANC, because they've been deployed since 1994. And you go look at the collapse of trade unions and the corruption in trade unions by people of dual membership of the ANC and COSATU. And you also look at the corruption in the SITAs, that was run by the Secretary General of the Communist Party. The court decisions that have been taken at the highest court in the land, exposing the corruption within the SITAs and so forth. And for the SACP to speak of corruption as if it's exclusive to the ANC, it throws me off very bad. And I think it's something that we need to look to. Because if the SACP had this high moral ground, you would not have SAMU collapsing, SATAU, SACAU, and all the other trade unions that were predominantly dominated by the SACP being collapsing financially because of corruption. Thank you very much.
Comrade Prof, perhaps you want to have a bite there before we close?
No, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Comrade Mlandwa, for that question. I think that the history of the ANC is very clear and is captured in the historical documents of the ANC as a multi-class, non-racial organization, and you need to understand what that means. In other words, and the ANC defines it very correctly. That is why I deliberately, many of you are here when I started, I deliberately spoke about the ANC as a disciplined force of the left. I spoke about the ANC as being the member of the Socialist International Forums. Precisely because the ANC understood, of course, the influence of the Communist Party, that the problem was imperialism. And now if you want to understand imperialism, you cannot understand imperialism without understanding racial capitalism in our context. Now, the ANC then goes further to say in Morogoro that the motive force of the National Democratic Revolution is the working class. Precisely because it understands that in our context, the working class, of course, there is and there was white working class, European third class who are part of the working class, definitely, no doubt about it. But in our context, the marginalized African people, black people in general, but African in particular, were the working class. What Fanon calls the cause and the effect. In Africa, is a cause and is an effect. You are white because you are rich. You are rich because you are white. That's why Gas is Ngamla when you're referring to a rich person, but obviously Ngamla is also equates to a white person, precisely because of fact of those dynamics of how racial capitalism plays. But the incident goes further and said, no, by the way, to build a new society, you need to bring not just the working class, not just the black people together. You need to unite all South Africans, black and white. That is why in the Freedom Charter it says South Africa belongs to all who live with it, black and white, and it's correct. But to do that, you then have to understand that there are other classes and class formations and stratas that exist beyond the working class. That's the essence of the multi-class, and that's the essence of the alliance. Now you can point fingers until the cows, what they say, until the cows come home. Who is corrupt, who's not corrupt? That the fact of the matter is that the ANC leads government, and the ANC, then you can say, no, that individual is corrupt, that individual is not corrupt. That's not the point. The point here is that we need to renew the ANC. And we need to renew our organizations beyond the ANC. And the SACP is very clear on that it needs to renew itself. Because if you don't do that, if you think that the corruption of the ANC is better than the corruption of the SACP or the corruption of that one, then you are missing the point. Because as I've said earlier on, corruption is counter-revolution. It is a treason and it must be treated as such. And that's what you must think about it when we deal with these issues. The issue here that must unite us is that we are representing the African working class people or the working class majority, but also want to unite that working class, that African working class majority with all other working class of the other national groups that exist in South Africa in building a united, non-racial, democratic South Africa. That's how you resolve the national question. You can only resolve the national question by resolving a class And that is why in the SACP we go further and say that you can never resolve the national question under the capitalist production. You cannot, in fact, transform the capitalist economy for the benefit, because it was designed, as I said earlier on, to ensure that Black people are slaves, or at the very least, are cheap labor. Comrade Mlungis, you are unmuted. So the point here, comrade, is that the long and short, all of us focus on renewing the movement. The movement means beyond the ANC. It means the alliance when we say the movement. It's the ANC-headed movement, but of course, it must be reconfigured. In fact, the Communist Party is helping us to reconfigure the movement. We need to renew it. Pointing fingers is not going to help anyone. But Chair, I'm more than happy to come back to have this conversation, which is important. It's not about who the SACP contesting elections, but it's about us renewing our organizations. Because we belong to, I'm a member of the ANC, I'm a member of the SACP. We need to renew them for the National Democratic Revolution. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Prof. Perhaps maybe before I forgot is that obviously there is a request for the slides to be shared. I'm not quite sure. Maybe what we can do, Prof, you can send it to Comrade Lucky. And therefore we can then share with us so that the comrades who have requested, I saw the emails and so forth, in the poster, comrades, there is my numbers and also numbers of the secretary. Just send those emails so that we can see how best we can share the slides, under impression that the Prof will not have a problem to share the slides.
Definitely, Chair. I will send the slides.
Yes. Now, on that note, thank you very much for the presentation and also the engagement that comrades have indicated. I fully agree that this is one of the difficult discussions that we needed to engage even far beyond this particular point. If it was possible, we could have even have the whole day conference dealing with this particular subject. But I'm equally excited that you have no issue in terms of coming back. And therefore, we can then take it from here and further engage on this particular subject. Now, on this note, comrades, and I've seen some of the questions, I'm not ignoring also on the chat room and so forth. Perhaps this is what I'm trying to emphasize, that the time that we have is not adequate enough to deal with this particular question. Now, on this note, comrades, it's just about 9:18. I'll ask Professor Tufeli to give us the vote of thanks.
Yeah, good evening, comrades. Thank you very much, Prof Mandla. I've never listened to somebody who spoke so well. You know, every word that you uttered was educational. It's true that you need to come back so that we can continue this topic. You are so clear, so sober-minded. What actually impressed me so much was the definition of a branch in good standing, and that renewal should actually come from ourselves. We cannot ask somebody else to renew. Perhaps us as members of the ANC or SACP have to renew ourselves. So thank you very much, and to everybody, this was a very productive evening. I could listen to you, Comrade Prof, the entire night. and not get tired. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Fairly. Perhaps maybe the last word from the Comrade Mandla.
No, Chair, mine is done. Thank you very much. And thanks for everything, comrades, and for the invite and for the engagements. I'm more than happy to come back. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, comrades, all the participants who came to this political education. We really appreciate your presence, and therefore this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. Good night.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissar.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night and thank you.